This week's podcast is all about Dalcour Maclaren's USP, which is why we only act for and never against utility and infrastructure clients. What that means is we don't act for private individuals. We only act for the acquiring authority. Some really interesting chat about the benefits to DM and the exciting opportunities that brings to people who work for us. So listen on and enjoy. Hi everyone and welcome to DM's You and I podcast. This week I'm joined by Simon Hinchcliffe, who is based out of our Manchester office. He's director at DM, has been here for 8 years. I call him the kind of king of the DCOs. He says definitely not, but he does a lot of DCOs as well as a lot of other things. Simon, do you want to fill in the gaps?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me here, James. So yeah, as James says, I've been here for 8 years now. Working to begin with on the Cadent Gas contract for a couple of years before making the big step into DCO offshore wind farm projects. The first one was the Dogger Bank A and B project up in East Riding of Yorkshire. And since then, worked on behalf of a number of other developers. I think I'm involved in 8 or 9 separate DCO applications at the moment. So yeah, quite a lot to be getting on with.
So you're quite busy.
Fairly busy, yes.
More capacity always.
We'll talk after, yeah.
Good. So today we're here to talk about DM's philosophy, which is acting only for utilities and infrastructure. And that is something that we've had in place since we started. And the aim today is to talk through why we made that decision, but also what benefits we believe it gives us and our clients. And Simon, I mean, you're involved day to day on that kind of stuff. And you were obviously attracted to DM 8 years ago to come here. Was that one of the factors that kind of made you think about it?
It was, yes. I mean, I was at a single office company before joining Dalcour Maclaren. I was there for just shy of 10 years. I didn't get the golden Rolex just before I left, but primarily I worked on behalf of a water company in the Northwest and the Environment Agency as well. That was 80-90% of my day-to-day, and it was always the general workload that I enjoyed most, the kind of pace that you worked at with it, making a difference with stuff. I also did work on behalf of landowners as well, doing valuation work, planning, but also acting against acquiring authorities as well. So I kind of have the benefit of seeing both sides of the fence and the challenges that each have. In terms of your question about the appeal of joining Dalcour Maclaren, it was that work stream. It was always the fast pace of it. I always enjoyed it. I was always more comfortable with it and feeling as though you are making a difference as well. It always appeared a young, vibrant company as well. I didn't want to kind of stagnate where I was, and I could really see opportunities to develop, not just on behalf of the 2 clients I mentioned, but offshore wind opportunities, renewable energies, which, you know, all that time ago, 8 years, it feels an awful long time ago now. But those were emerging technologies more at the time. It wasn't the day-to-day that we see more today. And how about you in terms of when you started the company? What was the reason for doing it?
Yeah, and I guess that's kind of right in the early days of why we made our decision to go down this route of only acting for and never against. One reason is I guess I, in my head, can't get it to work in that if you're advising your client, you know, as a utility and infrastructure provider 1 minute on how they should act, and then the next minute you're advising against them, it just doesn't sit comfortably with me for a start. But why did we do it right at the beginning is I worked for a partnership. They acted on both sides of the fence. And I think the kind of final straw that broke the camel's back that made me decide, hang on, this isn't working, was the day I turned up at a farmer's house with an engineer in tow and knocked on the door, and unbeknown to me, the senior partner walked out, and I thought, okay, hang on, this can't carry on. So, you know, I think we made that decision. We do not regret it at all. And people have constantly asked me why. And I think what would be really good for us to understand during this discussion today is, well, what are the benefits? It's there are a lot of benefits. Of course, there are some negatives too, and we can talk about that later. But on the whole, there are so many benefits in the decision we made in those early days that there is no reason for us to consider changing it, I don't think.
It was a very brave decision back then, because it seems a more obvious decision now because there is so much work, so many different developers and new kind of players in the market that are coming forward wanting to bring forward their technologies. Back then, it was a very different situation. There's probably less clients to go for. So, I mean, that's a really brave decision to go for ultimately, isn't it?
Yeah, but I guess it was we felt we could offer that service at a different level to how other more traditional people could offer it. And therefore we felt we'd make a difference by, okay, it's not just the fact we're acting for and not against it, the fact we can offer that modern, different as the service that is really focused on them. And I think that's the key thing for me, is that if you have a business, you need to make sure that your business ticks for your clients as a professional services business. And I think if your head is at both ends of the scale, looking for and against, if you're acting for and against, you don't have that focus. You're almost having to, have two hats. And I think that's very difficult to manage in this day and age. I think and I think when we started, I think we felt we can really give that dedicated focus service where clients feel comfortable having us around. They know that actually we're going to be there only with their interests at heart. They've got no concerns that we're going to pop up acting against them. And that mantra has worked for us.
Did you ever think about changing it?
No.
Not for a second?
No. I haven't ever. I mean, people harangue me, and I think I fight quite hard against it. And, definitely I think when we look at tenders and opportunities to come in, you could go, oh, look at that big ka-ching time. I could go for that tender. But actually, if it messes up our USP, I don't want to do it. And I think if you play the long game, which is what we're about here, it's worked.
Yeah,
definitely.
I agree.
So, just talking about the benefits then of our decision that we made, what do you think working, just for utilities infrastructure? What are the benefits it's given us as a company, as a group of people?
I think certainty for our clients. Ultimately, they know we're very unlikely to pop up on the other side of the fence, complaining about the quality of a reinstatement job, for example. They want to know that we understand what their drivers are, what their key considerations are when they're starting a job. They want us to understand the pace at which they work, how to engage with engineers and other disciplines on the projects, because we start that from day one. Ultimately, here as a company, our graduates, it's what they're learning.
So that's quite interesting. So you talk about the relationship bit, and I agree with you. How do you think, because of that focus, it allows us to get that really good relationship with our clients?
I think who we are as people, ultimately, a lot of the senior people in our company have probably done more on the other side of the fence as well. They understand what a project means, not just in terms of when it first arrives on the scene, but once it goes away again, what's left afterwards. So in terms of all the disciplines, you'll have your engineers that will seek to get that pipe or that cable in the ground. They won't necessarily be thinking about what comes afterwards. And because so many of us have seen that, and even now our graduates are seeing it day to day, they're hearing about past experiences from landowners and other projects. They know you have to think about longer than just getting that pipe or cable in the ground. What we can bring to the table more is that understanding on behalf of the landowners as to what it means for them afterwards as well. And that advice, we're therefore there from day one, giving that advice, feeding it into the other considerations that the engineers need to have, designers need to have. Everyone on that project team will ultimately turn to land and think, well, how are we going to resolve this matter? Because land is the most important aspect usually. And that's what I find the key driver for us.
And do you think that helps us with our whole business service offering? So, the fact we're expanding our business services, we're offering environmental, we're offering geomatics, and actually it's more because we got that focus that we're able to even tailor down those special professional services for our clients as well.
Yeah, absolutely, because we know what our clients need. Ultimately, we know the importance of getting those legal plans absolutely correct. It's no good having a surveyor just sketch something up, something they printed out on ProMap a couple of months ago or anything like that. You actually have that precise data. If you're talking about permitted development rights, for example, well, we need to change something about our design. How easy is it to do? Well, rather than surveyors playing planners, we've got planners to answer those planning questions as well, and they're there available instantly. Very, very easily for our clients, providing that immediate high quality service when they need it.
Having that focus and that specialism. I mean, we are in a niche world here. I say niche, it's quite a big world now, but it is a niche world. But if you look at the way, whether it's our land and property teams or environmental and planning teams or our geomatics teams, because we are so focused on utilities and infrastructure, means that we have real specialisms within the business. So, you talked about permitted development rights. Most of the time, our planners are very busy trying to educate planning officers about permitted development rights because we know it. We've been there, and our clients don't know. I mean, there are many occasions I can think where we've outlined that the permitted development rights, and our clients have gone, "What, you mean I don't need planning?" Yeah, no, you don't. Or actually, if you tweak that, you can get it. So that's where we can, I think, really we really add the value, if you know what I mean, in terms of our focus. So the other bit, just moving on from that. What about what are we able to give back to our clients in terms of I've used the word insights, and you can explain what insights is in a minute, because that's a kind of a sub-brand that we have. But what do you think what examples have you got of benefits that our clients get from our only acting for them?
I guess ultimately it's that understanding that if you have two projects that are running alongside each other, for example, as I've dealt with in the past, their drivers are going to probably be very, very similar to theirs. And their key concerns when you're entering into that negotiation with them, they're going to have the exact same considerations as your project is. So we understand, we can preempt what their concerns are going to be. And because we've dealt with it in so many cases where projects can be run side by side, you are drawing on that previous experience, previous data, how, lessons learned, things that went well about it, what worked last time, let's do that again, what really did not work, let's park that and do something differently.
Simon, so we're beginning to talk about the benefits of our philosophy here. One of the things that is right on the top of my mindset at the moment is DM's data, and what we do with our data. Now, as a company that acts only for one side of the fence, we get an awful lot of data that comes in. I mean, servers and servers full of it. You've done quite a lot of work with the data, and I'd be interested to hear in a bit more detail what we've done with it recently.
Absolutely. So gathering the data is one thing, but then actually extracting it and making use of it is another. So one of our babies here at Dalcour Maclaren is DM Insights. One of our favourite projects and relevant data that we start to get through more and more is agent fees. Now, we know the CAV have a fee survey annually. That, in my view, certainly is slightly skewed towards land agents on behalf of landowners. The data appears a little more one-sided. So we wanted to have a look at the data we could extract from our knowledge and experiences and share that with our clients, because there's not enough people in this industry. So resources strained all the time. So there are people coming into the industry that don't have the benefit of having worked in it for a number of years and have a feel for what is a reasonable land agent fee and how you should engage with landowners over payments of those fees, for example. So we've surveyed our teams here in the company, extracted that data anonymously, so there's no mention of projects or clients, anything of that sort. It all goes into one pot, and we extract it to make use of it. So, for example, we can look at the fee survey data geographically, which the CAV fee survey doesn't. We can extract the data that's relevant to our clients rather than to agents acting on behalf of landowners. We want to know, well, how are you going about paying those fees? Do you pay them direct to the landowner? Do you pay them direct to the agent? And does that have knock-on effects as well? What's been your experience of having paid direct to a landowner? One, for example, might be that landowner doesn't feel that they've been consulted with through the process because they've got no idea what their agent is doing in the meantime. They have no sight of how much is being paid on their behalf in some cases. So that can help advise our clients' strategy on what approach they should take with consultation. Because ultimately that silence that the landowner's encountering, it's silent for a reason, for the most part, because the consultation isn't taking place that time, but it's not as though information isn't being passed on to their representatives. But unless they can see what their agent is doing day in, day out, it's very hard to get that message through to them. So there's a lot of things that we can extract from that fee data and other areas as well. We're always looking for new areas where we can do these, extract internally the data that we have. So if people have suggestions, we're more than happy to consider them. We ask around internally. It can be things like land values that we're agreeing, leases, all sorts of different things. It can be the smallest thing, but it can actually give us an awful lot of useful information.
And I think, the world is changing daily. The pace of innovation is massive, as we know. That's another whole podcast, I can tell you. And there was one for later. But certainly data is key, and what we do with it is key as well. And I think, like you said, we're looking at our clients for our clients to tell us what they want, and we will extract it and give it. But I think we're able, because of this acting for and never against, we're able to give that overview, like you say, across the whole of the UK, and regionalise it. We can split it, I think, down by
sectors
as well.
Yeah. You know, what's the difference between agents acting against water acquiring authorities against a solar and battery storage developer?
And that makes quite an interesting read. Just changing tack then a little bit in terms of, and we'll come back to some more benefits in a minute, but one area that I think people listening to this will go, okay, so you're acting for, never against. When you're looking at the box in a tender, talking about conflicts, you probably tick never have a conflict. I think that's not quite true. We act for over 200 different infrastructure and utility clients across the UK, and we do get conflicts. Now, in terms of how do we operate, I think it'd be interesting to hear from you, because I know you've had this a few times. But generally, we can turn these into positive experiences for our clients. And it'd be interesting to hear some examples that you've got.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, ultimately, the larger the project, the more likely a conflict is likely to arise, particularly on a linear scheme. It's going to be crossing other utilities, other similar projects. They're all going to give rise to a conflict, and it's how you manage that conflict ultimately. Now, the advantage we have is that we happen to represent a lot of those other developers as well. And I lose track of the amount of times that Party A has contacted me saying, we can't get hold of someone at Party B. Can you speak to your project team and get them just to give them a nudge to speak to us? Something as simple as that can actually be really beneficial to our clients. One example as well, though, where with the offshore wind world, you get told where you are going to be connecting into a national grid substation.
Yeah.
Now, we tendered for two separate projects independently of each other, and we won them both, I'm pleased to say, James. Now, both those projects decided that they were going to make land in the same location, and the location that they were given by National Grid to connect was the same location. Now, as I say, we were instructed separately on each, but because we were a common denominator on those two projects, we were able to actually join together as a lands team. It got around, landowner exhaustion. These were DCO projects. So with a DCO, it's very much a process. There's a lot of consultation and an incredibly boring amount of paperwork that goes into it as well. Now, if you've got two projects side by side, you are dealing with double the paperwork. And as a landowner, you are going to feel a lot of exhaustion very quickly. What we were able to do is actually combine everything, get permission from the landowners that the projects can share that data. We send a single questionnaire out. Now, there's always going to be duplicates if the projects are on slightly different timelines. But there was a lot of benefit that those two projects have taken from this in terms of pushing forward tri-party agreements for the acquisition of the necessary rights. So the two projects are reporting together. They're not bidding against each other. The landowner's not, playing one off against the other. There were a lot of advantages to take from that kind of experience.
Yeah, no, that's good, and I think it is our pragmatic approach, hopefully, that actually allows those kind of things to go forward. So the other bit that I wanted to touch on, because I've been involved with this with various clients as well, is I think our position in the market with our kind of USP here is it allows us, I think, to help our clients with their strategy. Now, I know you've been involved with a whole lot of different land right strategies, and give me some examples of where you've been involved with land right strategies, where it's helped because you know how the industry ticks. We have lots of different clients. Some have a risk level up in the sky. Some have a risk level down on the floor. How has it helped you?
You've partly answered my question for me there. Obviously, the industry will have certain expectations, but yes, clients themselves will have different drivers. Some will like to eliminate risk by paying more. Others will be more prudent. They might not want to loosen the purse strings as much, and they might want to have a very effective, aggressive land right strategy in a slightly different way. So, we have experience of various different strategies here. It's ultimately all about those client drivers.
And the carrot and stick, kind of, which is what I always call it, is, how big is your carrot and how big is your stick? Because you've experienced it, I mean, presumably you can now, when a client builds its land right strategy with either a big stick or a big carrot, you can explain the pitfalls of it.
Absolutely. And sometimes a client one with slightly tighter purse strings will have a very aggressive program.
Yeah.
And you cannot be afraid to tell those clients that if you want to deliver this program and deliver your land rights voluntarily, you are going to have to loosen those purse strings a little bit. And sometimes you do have to have a difficult conversation to encourage them to do so.
Yeah. The other thing I just wanted to touch on very briefly was I think some people, and again, I think this is less so. When I first started doing utilities and infrastructure back in the day, even longer ago than 20 years ago, back in the partnership I was in, we were seen as the kind of dirty end of the world. We were hidden away in the back room because we didn't do sexy things like estate management for big clients or anything like that. We were just doing kind of stuff in the back room. The world has moved on and changed, but I still think that someone looking from the outside in at DM might think, oh, they only act on one side. They're going to limit my experience, going to limit the kind of life experiences that I have. It'd be quite interesting to hear from you because you've been there, done that, got the prize and the badge. Is quite interesting to hear from you in terms of that's not the case, is it? In terms of what you experience, it isn't. Just because we are only acting for and never against doesn't mean it's limiting your experiences. In fact, if anything, I think it's probably making it bigger. But give me some examples.
I mean, I do think it's very unfair. I mean, ultimately, a lot of people that work at this company are from an agricultural background as well. Those that are on the front line of a project, speaking to landowners, they are agricultural people themselves a lot of the time. So they have an understanding that they've been brought up with in terms of what are the concerns of a landowner. And I think it's a little, I think it's very unfair to think that we don't have that understanding and that we therefore just pile through and rush things through. All of our advice to our clients is placing great value on what those landowner considerations are. I've been on the other side of the fence as well. A number of people at this company haven't just been brought up at Dalcour Maclaren. We've got experience at other companies, as I said at the beginning, acting against National Grid as one example, and against United Utilities, who were a client at the time. So I saw the challenges that the other side faces, and that understanding is being passed on as we're training our graduates as well. Empathy is a big part of it.
Yeah, I agree. I think the other thing for me, which has always interested me in terms of the kind of the kind of work that we do, is that yes, you talk about linear projects, and yeah, we do a lot of linear projects. We do a lot of new network projects, which aren't always necessarily linear, but we do. But might be a nuclear power station, all those kind of things. But for me, what's really interesting is your farmer A might be growing wheat, farmer B might be growing sugar beet, farmer C might be growing hemp.
Digging deep into your knowledge here.
But it's all different, if you know what I mean. And no day is ever the same, really. And it's not just what crop they grow, but it's also the way they run their business. And I think one of the things that we are very good at is and you talk about the empathy bit, is you get on site and you see what you're up against, and you've got to try and work out, okay, this is a very commercial farming enterprise here. They're going to want us in and out as quickly as we possibly can, and we're going to make sure that we cause as least disruption as possible, as opposed to a family farm situation where this is potentially the worst thing that's ever happened to them, and you've got to convince them it isn't, and that you've got to go, and that is quite a skill.
It is, and sometimes we get it wrong. Sometimes if the desktop research hasn't thrown up that this land is being farmed by a very aggressive commercial entity, the wrong people will end up at that first meeting. And there's no hiding away from it. But we do have the people that can then come and have another meeting, and actually with that wider understanding of what their primary concerns are, there's the depth of experience there that can react to those different types of holdings.
So Simon, one of the other advantages, because we have all of these clients, is that we share information. We talked about that with insights and that kind of stuff. But actually, we have had our conference, our infrastructure conference that took place. You actually spoke at it very well. I gave you a pat on the back for that.
That's rare.
Oh, shut up. Anyway, be interested, your views of the people we had in the room that day. And the kind of feedback we got.
It was a fantastic day. I mean, not only was I hugely relieved to get off the stage in the end once I'd finished, but you could really see how engaged all of those clients were on that day. Obviously, the industry itself, the CAV, the RSS, they do host events, but it's very mixed. It's tailored for everybody. It's not just going to be for developers. A developer might be afraid to ask a question for fear of upsetting an agent that sat on the other end of the row that they're acting against at that time, whereas this was an event where they could all come together, they could share their experience, they could bounce ideas off each other. We had some real industry-leading experts speaking at that event, and the engagement from everyone in the audience really was quite fantastic. It was unexpected for me how much engagement there actually was, and just speaking to everybody afterwards, they were so appreciative of that opportunity to get together in that environment.
And I totally agree. I think the feedback I certainly got, the kind of big plus for me was that it wasn't just the power sector or the water sector. It was a real mix, and we had all sorts of different kind of utilities infrastructure, but actually there are a lot of similarities in terms of what their pain and pressure points are, and some of the areas that we can help them out.
And some of the clients with the different drivers as well, ultimately. Some of those that we mentioned with the tighter purse strings were there face-to-face with those with the looser purse strings, and talk about the different experiences that they'd had with their approaches. So it was a real beneficial event for everybody.
And I think that is, to summarise, is one of the real sort of positives about DM, is that, we have set ourselves out to be this company that only acts for, never against. And I think, our aim is to obviously attract clients, infrastructure and utility clients to us, but also attract people into us as well who want to actually work for these clients that are fundamentally pushing for the net zero agenda, and actually, you said it right at the beginning, putting something back, and I'm sure you're the same, Simon. I'm a sado. I drive around the countryside going, oh, I put that in and I did that. I'm sure you're the same.
How did you know? Yeah.
People tell me to shut up generally, but anyway. But good. No, so thank you, Simon, for that. And just on the insights thing, I think if people are interested in seeing more of the insights data that you've got, particularly on the fee survey, just come back to us. We're happy to share it with people from the utility infrastructure world.
There's a post on LinkedIn at the moment, I believe, that people can register their details to be able to see that data.
And equally, if they want more info on other stuff, talk to you. You want the ideas so that actually when we do another insight publication, we've ticked the boxes for them.
Absolutely.
Good. Thanks, son. Great talking to you.
Thank you very much.